I was away last week. I don't know who was here last week. It wasn't me. So I've got the white slip over here, and we're going to play with that. And it doesn't have much to do with the form, just in how you might sort of approach getting it on to whatever it is you're making.
That's it?
It's good for us, right?
It is.
So what with this piece, what I'm going to do is kind of leave it somewhat thick. And I'm not going to form it until I get the slip on there. Just because of the method that I'm going to use, that's why I'm not putting it on after I make the form. So to get it to stick really well, I'm going to get rid of all the slip that's on the outside of this thing. Actually, color this in so that shape help me a little bit. Just get rid of all that. So one of the ways of going about this slip is to just sort of use your hand to put it on. Now I've formulated the slip over there. In the last year I've sort of changed the way that I make it. What I do is, in the past it was just, use some porcelain clay, add water, and try to bring it up to a yogurty type consistency. Now what I'm doing is bringing it past a yogurt consistency to really, really thick, and then dropping in a little bit of sodium silicate, and that causes, how do I say it? It changes the electrical charge or something that's in the between the particles of clay. So you can take a slip that's really, really thick with a little bit of sodium silicate and bring it back to a real milky consistency, real watery, real runny. And then I pack a bunch more dry material into there, so it's essentially twice as much dry material as there would be water normally, right? So the benefit of that is that it gets really stringy, and normally slip wouldn't sort of sit in between your fingers like that. It wouldn't sort of keep those drips like that. And so it holds its shape really nicely that way. It also dries fairly fast, and I mean that, not that it dries instantly, but it doesn't take nearly as long before that outer surface is touchable, right, without damaging the slip surface. So that's the other nice thing about it. I guess the third thing would be that you can get it on fairly thick and not have it crack on you. Slip that's made with just water, if it gets on too thick, you'll get these little fissures running through it a lot of times. So don't be afraid to use it kind of thick. And what I'm going to do in this case here is just sort of take a handful of it and Start to turn the wheel, and then I'm just going to kind of let the slip fall onto the pot. So you can see how it really sort of holds its shape nicely, and you can get a real soft type appearance from it. And so now the trick is to get this thing formed without touching that outside surface. And so then it just becomes about, what I do is I'll brace, hold my hand, because I can't connect here effectively. So what I'll do is I'll raise my shoulder up and keep my elbow in, but I'm bracing off of my leg here and then holding my hand nice and steady as I go down into it. Just to get it started.
Which fingers are actually touching the inside?
You can see mostly there, a little bit there, barely anything there.
I just wasn't sure if you were pushing out there.
Well, you know, when I start to, then I'm using, you can see I was using sort of the back sides of my fingers, and definitely was sort of doing that as I went in. I'm going to make a couple of cups as well, and you'll see it easier there. Well, to do the technique I just used, once that form is in place like that, it's hard to negotiate your hand going around all those surfaces, and then the slip really starts to look like the contour that you're trying to go around, right? And so here, the slip and the form don't have as much of a relationship. You know, the way the slip drips is separate from the form.
So you intentionally left enough
Intentionally left some down here.
on? No, onto drip where it's different
Yes.
thicknesses.
Yep. And then I've got my fancy rib here, the little groove cut out of the tip.
It's the groovy.
Groovy rib.
Now, are you undercutting it right now too?
Underneath here?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bead that's left down underneath there.
No, I mean where the slip begins. Have you undercut the form?
Yeah, because I'm gonna. It's important for me anyway to be able to pick this thing up off of here and move it and keep working on the same guy. And that's just how I'm used to doing things. I think it doesn't have much to do with what I'm making. I guess. Take that slip off the lip just a little bit. Kind of a weird form.
So what would you use for a glaze on that?
Whoa.
To take advantage of that. I mean, that's a really sweet little, like rough one there. I mean, that's not exactly.
Yeah, you know,
but you know, like a lot of glazes would.
any of the transparent glazes I think would be nice. The Celadons for sure. You know, the waxy black wouldn't do that thing any
Yeah, I was
good
thinking
at
like
all.
probably just like.
Right.
Look
But
like
now I think like the Hannah's Buttermilk would be okay. You know, because that tends to show a little bit of texture underneath it and breaks over texture a little bit more than the waxy or the tomato.
So if you're planning on doing
Right. Well, you know, there's a lot of times where I use the same exact clay body. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, that becomes a place for me
Sure.
to pick it up.
Sure.
It's okay to pay.
Okay.
And then, you know, depending on how you work your hand, you can get different type effects, you know. And then if you don't like it, it's okay to take it off.
Now that
Again.
it's inside, is that a problem?
Now, I'll clean that out of there later.
Is that too big?
Or frosting.
What?
Or frosting. I tend to think of culinary terms myself.
Love that.
First. Can you really start on that wheel right now so it really spins?
It smack us over here.
You'd be happy.
You stand real close. You stand real close.
I knew what.
I took my first midterm today. My first midterm since 1968. The latest. Two-dimensional design.
You're saving something in you. Non-American.
Found an Ivy Tech.
My friend did that. He loved that.
No, on that last move, I definitely was pushing my finger out, but I was also sort of using my whole hand, right? And so to get that lip spread open more, it really becomes about opening your fingers up inside of there. I mean, the drawback to doing it this way is you lose a little bit of the definition that you build up in the beginning. But if you were just throwing a cylinder, you know, and if it was straight up and down there, and didn't want to change the shape, you could easily keep that real high definition going. And then lastly, or maybe not.
Next.
So thinking about a bowl now, go into bowl territory. Shaping done. Nice little nibber in the middle there.
Now, are all the slips that are back in the blazer the same consistency?
Mostly, yes.
What was the question?
All the slips back in the blazer are
Oh,
made
the
that
same
way?
formulation.
Yeah, what I'm doing is I've got a 5-gallon bucket that I've mixed the slip into, and then as I make the slips, I'm using the same consistency each time. And then I'll just add colorant to the different ones that I've colored.
Have you changed the colors?
I haven't, no, it's still mostly the same. I am hoping to develop a few more colors. Jesse wanted to expand the palette a little bit for slips.
It's been a while since I've used those. Before it used to be you had to put several layers on, since this is thicker, do you not need to?
No, I think one layer would be enough. Yeah, and I've got a brush here. Let's see how it goes. First off, I'm going to lay the lip out on this one. Done. That would be plenty of slip.
just know before that you would see brush strokes and it took several coatings, otherwise you would see kind of the undercolor.
Yeah, you know, as far as sort of that evidence of the tool you were using, I think that's not going to go away.
But this was like you could see the under, like how you could see the brush strokes, like it wasn't thick enough.
Yeah, I can see a little bit of the clay showing through down on the inside where the brush strokes have made it kind of thin. And I would imagine that maybe some of that iron will float through in the firing. Let's try this. I'm just going to use that little corner of the rib there, little edge. Let's bring some of that clay back. This clay is stiff enough, I think it'll be fine to lift right off there. Oh yeah. You know, in the past
Chad, could I feel that clay? I want to see how stiff it is.
stiff, quite stiff.
Yeah.
Sure, could you? Or better yet, can you bring me a piece of newspaper over there?
Piece of what?
The newspaper.
All right.
Good. Yep, just one. So in the past, I've shown this, but I know we've got a few new people. One of the ways you can resist the slip is with newspaper. Tape would work, I think. And again, in this instance, I think that just dealing with a straight cylinder is the best as far as making it work. So paper will have a grain to it, and it usually tears pretty evenly one direction, right? So if you try to tear it that way, it doesn't want to go. But you can usually make pretty nice strips if you tear with the grain. You know, and you could, this could be anything. I mean, you could cut out snowflakes if you wanted to, right?
Little Santas.
Little Santas, yep. And then wet it. You know, and I think that, you know, the brush is nice, but I think it's easier to distribute the slip with your hand. There's something about it sort of sticking to the brush and not wanting to distribute easily. And then if the brush surface is what you want, then you can go back to the brush and finish it. And then they do recommend that the things that I've read and done and seen or whatever, it helps a little bit to let that slip dry a little bit before you take it off, because occasionally you'll get that bleed. It's from it kind of it pulls it underneath as you're taking it off.
And for those of us who don't know anything, what's this look like when it's fired? What are we gonna see? Like,
Well,
are we gonna get to see these fired so we remember this? And, you know what I'm saying?
I hope so. I mean,
Like, what are we gonna see when it's fired?
well, you're essentially taking a clay body that has a lot of iron in it, and with the white slip, at least, you're changing it to looking like it might if it were porcelain.
Okay.
So this is porcelain clay. It's the same porcelain clay that's in the boxes.
Yeah.
Right? It's the English porcelain. If it were one of the colored slips, there's a dark blue, I think. There's a blue, there's a dark green, there's a light green. There is black and an iron. Now the black and the iron slip look nearly the same, except the glazes react differently on each one. And so, had this been stained with blue, well, you get a clear glaze over it, and you're going to get that iron-rich surface of the clay, and then that blue, nice. It would almost look like you used a blue glaze in a way. Right? You could take the porcelain clay that we have in the box and wedge in some cobalt carbonate to it, and it would turn blue, and you could throw blue pots all day long. The problem with that is that cobalt is toxic, and so to have an intimate relationship like that with cobalt isn't desirable. And so the slip then becomes a way to get it on the pot without having to deal with it too much on an intimate basis. And if you just use a brush, you barely have to touch it at all, which is nice. And not that the cobalt is seeping through your skin, but if you have cuts, an open sore, yeah, it'll go into your bloodstream, and you start to get the crazies.
That explains
Maybe
it.
that's what
So
it is.
that explains it.
Right.
Ah, yes.
Now it's coming clear.
There's another one that's really toxic that a lot of ceramic studios just don't have anymore. I'm trying to remember it. Glazing agent.
Barium.
Barium, that's it. Yep.
So that if you go close, you'll see the white.
Now what I'm doing here is I've got a pretty dry hand, and I'm really trying to create a lot of friction. And you can see how that friction I'm using inside there is turning the clay, torquing it around, and so you can get some pretty nice effects that
And I
way.
just feel like, why is this different than
without-
a glaze? You know what I'm saying? I'm trying not to be clear.
Why is it different
Like,
than a
why
glaze?
is, yeah, I mean, I know glaze is
Well,
color. And,
if you were to make these stripes with glaze and then put another glaze on top, you're going to create a runny situation probably. Where whenever you have two different glazes in contact with each other, well, the way they're formulated changes, and it could end up really running. And that could run onto the kiln shelf, sticking the pot to the shelf, essentially ruining the piece. So here you've got a way to make color without interrupting the glaze chemistry, because it is just clay. Does that make sense? Okay.
So, you know, I mean, I'm still learning, so I don't even
Yeah.
know what I'm asking really hardly.
Okay.
And then there's also textural differences, yes, you know what I mean?
I'm interested in fire, because I don't think it's
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
I want to ask you a question that you showed us once before, and my memory is so long I forget.